So I guess I'll introduce myself. I do have a cold, so I do sound a little funny right now, but it is that lovely time of year. I am Jenna Martirana. My current title is Miss Red Rose City 2021. I am a local title holder in Pennsylvania, and my social impact initiative is It's Okay to Not Be Okay. I decided when I became involved with Miss America organization that I wanted to become a mental health advocate because I am someone that lives with depression, anxiety, and PTSD, and I know how harmful the effects of stigma have been on my own recovery journey. And so I want to share my story with others so they know that it's okay to not be okay and that there's help available to them. So that's my little spiel. So today I'm going to be talking about my favorite topic, which is ending the stigma around mental health. So let's get into it. Let's see. I haven't done Zoom stuff, I feel like, in forever. Does that do it? No. What one's privacy settings? Yes, you can open my screen. Oh, goodness. Just a second. Gotta love when it updates. Alrighty. Share. Alrighty. Give me a thumbs up if you can see it. We good? Perfect. Okay. So this is actually part of my presentation that I give to Girl Scouts. So you guys got a little bit of that going on too, but this is It's Okay to Not Be Okay. I guess I have to hit present. That would be helpful, guys. Let me move us out of the way. There we go. All righty. It's okay to not be okay. So you guys can drop in the chat or you can unmute and answer what you think the answer is. How many young people will experience a mental health problem in any 1 year? You think it's 1 in 5, 1 in 50, or 1 in 150? Oh, I see the chat. Woo, why is things moving? There we go. Correct, 1 in 5, which actually is the same statistic for adults as well. So fun fact. I'm full of those. All right. What are the most common mental health problems experienced by young people? Schizophrenia, depression and anxiety, or anorexia? Correct, depression and anxiety, which is again also the same for adults. Okay, so mental health and mental illnesses. The World Health Organization defines mental health, which everybody has, as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes their own potential to be able to cope with the normal stresses of life, that they can work productively and fruitfully, which is a funny word, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So that's kind of the very professional diagnosis of the definition of mental health. But like I said, it is something that everyone has. Not everybody might have a mental illness, but we do all have mental health. And it's important to do what we can to protect our mental health. So there are different types of mental illnesses. One of the most common is depression, and this is characterized by lasting low moods, hopelessness, and loss of energy. Diagnostically, you have to be experiencing these symptoms for a certain amount of time. So all of us do feel sad at some point. All of us can feel depressed, but it might not be enough to be clinically depressed. So it's important to make sure that you go to a mental health practitioner to be able to get an actual diagnosis for any of these. Anxiety disorders, there is quite the variety of them, but they are characterized by a lasting sense of worry, panic, dread, and that's affecting someone else's ability to live their life as usual. One thing that I always stress about anxiety disorders is while a lot of us face anxiety at a lot of different points in our lives, what makes something an anxiety disorder is the fact that it is significantly impacting one's ability to function. Eating disorders, there's also a wide variety of these. that someone may have an unrealistic view of their body shape and their weight. And it's not just about dieting. This can be related to someone's low self-esteem or how they're coping with a difficult situation or emotions. It can often be because of trauma that they've endured or because of bullying. So these also have a lot of different underlying causes. Self-harm is often a way of coping with emotional difficulties. And self-harm can include a variety of different things. We often think of just cutting as one form of self-harm, but bruising, extreme dieting, extreme exercise are all forms of self-harm as well. And lastly, psychosis, which is when someone has a change of reality, such as hearing voices, seeing things that other people don't see or hear, and this can cause them to feel paranoid. Psychosis can be caused by other mental illnesses and can be is definitely something that is very scary for people who do experience it. When someone doesn't understand that you hear something or you see something that's not there, because as someone who does have psychosis, that is 100% there. They firmly believe and cannot be persuaded that whatever they're hearing or seeing does not exist. I should have prefaced this by saying I will be graduating in May with my Master of Science in School Counseling. So I am almost a mental health practitioner. So some of the stuff I try not to give too much of the clinical aspect of things. So I want to make it so you guys can understand it as well. Why do people develop mental illnesses? This has been, I feel like this is something we'll never know exactly the answer to because there are so many different causes. For some people, it can be a chemical imbalance in their brain, especially when it comes to depression. Some people feel that it's about trauma, which everyone has a personal story of trauma and abuse which it can include abuse. Whoa, come back. Traumas include abuse, grief, bullying, separation, loss. And one thing that I want to specify when it comes to trauma is how your body reacts to an event. So an event would be a natural disaster, a school shooting, a divorce of your parents, a loss of a loved one. All of those are traumatic events, and the trauma is how your body reacts to it. And so not everybody will might not develop post-traumatic stress disorder, might not develop depression, even though they've experienced the same traumatic event as someone else who did develop those mental illnesses. And the reason for that is because everybody has their own protective factors, and these help them cope with those situations. So having strong coping skills, having high self-esteem, having a good support system are all protective factors that will play into how someone copes with a traumatic event. Another is that there's a lack of money or privilege. And this means that somebody might not have the access to help earlier on. And so they're not able to get either the mental health help that they need, physical help to cope with whatever situations are going on in their lives. There's a lot of different views on why someone might develop a mental illness, but it's important to understand that someone's personal view is always listened to and respected because there is no one answer. Everybody will go through different things in their lives, and how they view a situation will be different than how you view it because of what you've experienced, and that's okay. So there are a lot of myths when it comes to mental illnesses, and these play into the stigmas that surround them. There's no hope for people with mental illnesses. I can't do anything for a person with a mental illness. People with mental illnesses are violent and unpredictable. That has to be one of the biggest, most stigmatizing misconceptions out there. And I want to point out that statistically, somebody with a mental illness is more likely to have a violent act enacted upon them than them commit a violent act themselves. Mental illnesses don't affect me. Mental illnesses affect everybody, whether it be personally or through someone you know. With 1 out of 5 people battling a mental illness at some point in their life, there is no way that you won't know somebody who is struggling with their own battle. People with mental illnesses cannot tolerate the stress of holding down a job. That's definitely not true. I mean, I go to grad school, I run my own business, I work a job, but it can make it difficult. It can make it more, it can be a lot for somebody to handle if they're not coping well with their mental illnesses. Therapy and self-help are a waste of time. Why bother when you can just take a pill? That is something that a lot of people, especially if you're parents, I hear when I'm working in the schools, that they think that just taking a pill is going to fix everything. But in reality, medication is a great option, but it's not a quick fix. Usually mental health medications take about 6 weeks for them to start actually affecting your brain and making a difference in your body. But the best method of and the best treatment for mental illnesses is a combination of therapy and medication. But everybody is different, and how their bodies and their minds react to things will be different. So there's not one size fits all treatment option. Lastly, people think that children don't experience mental illnesses and their actions are just products of bad parenting. That's not the case at all. Working in the schools, I know exactly what these kids are going through. And while yes, trauma does play into if whether someone develops mental illnesses or not, it is not just caused by bad parenting. There are so many different factors that can go into that. And something that I love to talk about with children is mental illnesses, because they do affect them, and adults don't realize that children do understand mental illnesses and understand when they're not feeling well. So it's important to start those conversations young in a way that kids understand. I always have lots of books such as The Princess and the Fog. That was one of my favorite ones to read to kids about depression. So there are plenty of ways that you can make mental illnesses a topic that children do understand. Here we go, stigma. Okay. So if you guys want to unmute and talk, you can. If not, that's fine. So you can tell me what you think stigma is, or what this word means to you, and whether you've heard people use this word or not. I'm sure Abby has heard this quite a bit on her own. That's okay, because I have a lovely description of it. So stigma includes the negative stereotypes, labels, judgment, and prejudice that can lead to discrimination. Stereotypes are generalized beliefs such as people with mental illnesses are violent. Prejudice is judgment based on that belief. They're violent and I'm scared and I don't want anything to do with them. Discrimination is that they are actions based on those judgments and beliefs. I won't hire someone or rent to a person with a mental illness because I'm scared of them. So you can see how stereotypes lead to prejudice, prejudice leads to discrimination, and all of this is considered stigma around people with mental illnesses. So there are some different types of stigmas, one of them being public stigma. And this is stigma that is faced externally from a system, group, or an individual. Public stigma can affect different areas of one's life, including employment, housing, healthcare, and education. Another one is self-stigma. This is one that I struggled with a lot with depression and anxiety in high school. We'll move the little guy out of the way. Okay. Internalized public beliefs that affect one's self-esteem and self-efficacy. It can cause people to think that I'm not worthy or I'm not able. They could think, why try? Why should I try getting better? Why should I try getting help? Because there's no hope for me. Diminished care seeking and treatment engagement. People do not want to seem as if they're one of those people, so they aren't likely to seek out mental health services. And this can lead to worse outcomes for their recovery. Some of the stigmas that I internalized were one around medication. When I did outpatient treatment in high school, they started everybody on medication. And I kept thinking, I don't want this. I shouldn't need a happy pill to be happy. I should be able to be happy on my own. Now, today, I fully endorse medication and remind people that you wouldn't shame somebody with diabetes for needing insulin or somebody with asthma for needing an inhaler. So we shouldn't shame somebody for needing medication for their mental health. Another stigma is that I didn't want people to know that I was going to therapy. I actually did school-based counseling. So I went to therapy during the school day once a week, but I didn't tell anybody about it. I would just get pulled out of class. And I didn't want people to know that I was going to therapy because I didn't want them to think that there was something wrong with me, even though nowadays I say that most people go to therapy to deal with people who won't go to therapy. And I fully endorse everybody going to therapy because, I mean, who doesn't want to talk to somebody that's not going to judge you for 30, 40 minutes a week? Sounds pretty good to me. And then, yeah, worse outcomes for recovery. The more that I put off not getting help because I didn't want people to know what was going on with me, the worse my own mental health became. Come on, page. There we go. Some common stigmas that are associated with mental illnesses is that people are dangerous. And like I said earlier, it's far more likely that somebody with a serious mental illness will be the victim of violence. People often think that somebody with depression is lazy, but in reality, mental illnesses take a toll not only mentally, but physically on the body, making it difficult to do things that are simple, such as getting out of bed, taking a shower, taking your medicine, or even eating. Mental illnesses are a choice. This one always bothers me because nobody would choose to have a mental illness. There are so many different factors that go into somebody being diagnosed with a mental illness, and it's not something that anybody should wish on anybody or think that somebody would choose to have. As terrible as they can be and as hard on one's personal life, relationships, work life, education, it's not something that anybody should think that somebody would choose to have. The effects of stigma. They can cause somebody to withdraw or feel isolated from their loved ones. They can be reluctant to seek help or treatment and are less likely to stay with treatment if they think that, if they feel the stigma around mental illnesses. Development of depression, worsening of symptoms, lowered self-esteem, reduced hope, and problems with relationships with friends and family. That's something that I struggled with. My grandparents didn't think that depression was real. They didn't think that I could be going through these types of things. And so it did cause issues because I knew what I was going through was real and I couldn't force them to understand how I was feeling. Development of depression and worsening of symptoms, the longer that we put off getting help, just like with a broken bone or being sick, the longer we put it off, the worse it's going to get. So here are some ways on how we can fight stigma. Hold on a second. Before I have a coughing attack. Talking openly about mental health, such as what my favorite thing is sharing on social media. Just talking about how you're doing mentally. It doesn't have to be talking about, oh, I have this mental illness or whatever. Just saying, like, talking about that, hey, like, I've been having a rough time coping with the pandemic or coping with grad school, all those types of things. And this is something that I've noticed has increased during the pandemic. People have been more willing to share about their mental health on social media. And I hope that that continues because it's a really easy way for people to realize, hey, there's other people out there that I know that are going through these types of things that I'm going through. Another way is to educate yourself on others. So responding to misconceptions or negative comments about people with mental illnesses by sharing facts and experiences. It's pretty hard for someone to argue to argue with you when you have the data to back up, hey, people do have mental illnesses. In fact, 1 out of 5 people have a mental illness. Being conscious of language and reminding people that their words matter. One of the biggest things that bothers me is people saying that somebody committed suicide. And being someone who is a suicide attempt survivor, this probably is why it bothers me the most. But saying that somebody committed something makes it seem like it's a crime. That's automatically what our brain goes to. And people who are battling suicidal ideation are not criminals. Those who die by suicide, which is the correct term, were not criminals. They are dealing with an unbearable pain that nobody should have to go through. So it's important to be conscious of your language, whether that be not saying, oh, the weather's so bipolar recently, or, oh, I'm so depressed when you're just feeling sad that day. It's important to watch what we say because you don't know who is battling those mental illnesses and who is going to be hurt by the things that you say. Encouraging equality between physical and mental illnesses. So drawing comparisons on how we treat somebody with cancer or diabetes. I was at a conference, I believe, and somebody said that mental illnesses are not casserole illnesses. When somebody has cancer or when somebody has a broken bone, people bring them casseroles and are there to offer them support and to help out in their lives. When somebody's in the hospital for a mental illness, people don't show up that way. People don't want to know that you're there. People don't show up with flowers and support and ask what they can do for you. When in reality, we need somebody who is battling a mental illness, especially if they're hospitalized for it, need just as much compassion as somebody battling a physical illness or a physical injury. Showing compassion for those with mental illnesses, being honest about whoopsie, I'm back. Let me move this out of the way again. Our little pictures are blocking things. So showing compassion for those with mental illnesses goes along with encouraging equality. If you know somebody is going through a tough time, talking to them and asking them, hey, do you need help with something? Is there something I can do for you? Being honest about treatment. Like I said, this was one that I struggled with. Normalizing mental health treatment, just like any other healthcare treatment. Something that I love is our Miss Kansas 2019, 2020, Annika Wooten always posts when she goes to therapy on her story and talks about that. Our Miss Oregon 2019, 2020 was really good about talking about how she started doing teletherapy during the pandemic and doing things like that. Normalize that conversation, normalize that people realize it is okay to go to therapy. It is okay to get help for those mental illnesses. Oh my goodness, I'm dying here. Demanding change from your elected representatives. This means writing emails, calling, and demanding that change does occur. This can also be talking about who you vote for when it comes time to vote for your local representatives, your state representatives, and the president, looking to see where they are on topics on mental health. I work with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and a program that we encourage is called Vote for Mental Health. And during, at least I know for our presidential elections, they have something that shows up that you can go on Vote for Health. You can Google Vote for Mental Health, and it'll show you each presidential candidate and where their stances when it comes to mental health treatment and funding for mental health. So I highly encourage you to look into that and look into your local representatives to see whether they're supportive and whether they believe funding should be allocated towards mental health services. Providing support for organizations that fight stigma by volunteering. Like I said, I partner with the National Alliance on Mental Illness. There is a chapter in every state, and there is local chapters as well. That might be a little harder. There aren't quite as many local chapters in some states as others, but every state does have a state chapter. So I definitely recommend going to NAMI.org, NAMI.org, and looking for your local chapter. They are always happy to have volunteers contributing to research related to mental illnesses and stigma. You can donate to NAMI. You can donate to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Both of these organizations are doing incredible work to end stigma and to find research and to provide services for people who have these illnesses. And of course, my favorite, sharing your own experiences with mental illnesses. Not only does this help other people realize that they're not alone, but it's empowering for yourself. While I have gone to therapy for many years, I take medication, I always say that the most helpful part of my recovery journey was sharing my story with others. And so that's not something that I'd expected to happen when I first started advocating with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, but something that I'm eternally grateful for. See? So lastly, just want to talk about how we can talk about mental illnesses. What are some do's and don'ts? I'm gonna start with the don'ts because then we can end on a positive note. So don't say things like it could be worse. Just deal with it. Everyone feels that way sometimes. We've all been there. You've got to pull yourself together. Maybe try thinking happier thoughts. Don't we all love that one? All of these are very minimizing towards what somebody is going through. It can make them not want to reach out to that person for help when they are struggling. It can make them feel that they are alone and that nobody understands what they're going through. Some better options are thanking them for opening up to you. That's not always an easy thing. For me, it is because I've done it so much, but especially in the beginning, it can be very scary and very difficult for one to do. Ask them, is there anything I can do to help? Sometimes people just want somebody to listen to them. They don't need advice. They don't need your suggestions on what to do. So just asking them, is there anything I can do to help? Or how can I help? Thank them for sharing because, like I said, it can be a scary thing. So knowing that that you understand what they're saying and that you're appreciative that they came to you with that information can be helpful. I'm sorry to hear that. It must be tough. A statement like that validates what they're going through and lets them know that you heard what they're saying. I'm here for you when you need me. That person might not need help or really need anything at that moment in time, but to know that they can come to you when they do need something is very helpful. I can't imagine what you're going through. People do get better. That one's important because okay, some of these I don't. Well, okay, oh man, that sucks. You on the other side. I apologize. People do get better. That is important. People can often feel, especially when it comes to depression, that there is no hope, that things don't get better. And that's why I share my story to people, is to offer that hope, to see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that there is hope that things will get better. Doing practical things, asking them, can I drive you to an appointment? Can I help you around the house? Something that I know I struggle with when I'm feeling really depressed is keeping my room clean or my craft room clean. And so having somebody offer like, hey, can I help you clean a little? Like, is that okay? Can be a huge burden off of your shoulders because you do know that you're living in filth. You do know that it's not socially acceptable how you're living, but you just don't have the energy to physically be able to do it. Asking them, how are you feeling today? Because it is, oh, Abby, we're almost done. Because it is going to be, it's not a linear process. You will feel different every day, and you might have good days, you might have bad days. So just checking in on how they're doing that day can be helpful. And then saying, I love you. Knowing that you have that support and you have that system around you can be a huge impacting factor on how one processes their mental illnesses and on how one copes and how one recovers, because they know that they have that support system behind them. Abby, I am done. I'm sorry you just popped in, but you've missed me coughing the entire time, so you didn't really miss too much. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, there's something in the chat. I took my glasses off so I can't see. You're welcome. All righty, well, that's it for me, guys. Let me stop sharing. Is that what? No.